Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. To believe or to not believe in God is a classical philosophical debate with no clear answer. There are two main ideologies. One prioritizes empirical proof over anything else, while one argues for God with logical arguments. Separate to this debate are people who believe in God through faith and personal reasoning. Muslims specifically understand God's perspective towards atheism through the Quran and its explanations. Are atheists simply wrong? Or is the answer more complex than that? To start with, atheism is defined as the lack of belief in a God, often due to lack of proof for God, or due to the reason mentioned above, due to inconclusivity of the God debate. Therefore, to discuss atheism, a discussion from the perspective of acceptance of God is required. First of all, there's the matter of fitrah, or natural disposition present in every single human. The idea here is that the natural state of a human being is inclined to believe towards a creator. The fitrah is present in every human at birth, and so each human starts off life with an inclination towards belief in God. Let us discuss this concept further. Where do we encounter such inclinations? Firstly, there is the human behavior of turning towards a higher being when in crisis. This is one of the most widely observed human behaviors. As the famous saying goes, there are no atheists at sea. When harm touches people, even non-religious people start praying, hoping for intervention from a higher power. This behavior is directly mentioned in the Quran in Surah Ankabut, verse 65. When people happen to be aboard a ship, caught in a storm, they cry out to God, sincerely devoted. Yet, as soon as they reach the shore safely, they abandon the belief immediately. This is hypocritic behavior and an indication of the natural disposition towards belief in God present within humans. Moving further, we can observe the natural presence of theism within children. Studies in cognitive science show children tend to assume a few things related to belief in a creator, that the world was made for a purpose, that objects exist for a reason, that someone intended objects to exist for a reason. Children explore such concepts and ask clarifying questions. A famous example of this being that children perceive mountains as being for climbing. Thus, fitrah is naturally present within a human in the earliest stages of development. From this, we can conclude something. Lack of belief in God is not the original state humans are born in, but rather, it is a deviation from our natural state due to internal or external factors. Classical scholars have explained this concept through analogies, with the most famous one being that of Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali described the heart as a mirror which reflects truth, but over time it becomes rusted due to sin and false ideas. Therefore, the heart loses clarity in recognizing the truth. In other words, the fitrah is corrupted over time. These deviations from the fitrah are natural, but they are expected to be corrected. The Quran is a source of divine guidance for humans. It would be expected that such a divine book addresses some common deviations. It does. It contains arguments against these deviations in an attempt to cause people to think and return back to their correct state. There are a couple of direct arguments presented to people who lack belief in a creator, told to us directly by God. Firstly, there is the issue of our creation. Mentioned across numerous places in the Quran is the question of our own existence. Surah Tur, verse 49 mentions, were they created from nothing or are they their own creators? Neither of these possibilities make sense, existence from nothing or self-existence. There has to have been a creator. We can go further and ask what caused the creator then. The Quran has a simple answer for that. The creator is Al-Qayyum, self-sustaining. By definition, God does not have a creator, and this is consistent with our view of the universe. In this universe of contingency, there is a need for a necessary self-sustaining existence. Moving on, the Quran asks people to reflect on the order of this universe. The universe has a precise structure and precise laws. Typically, observing such order would imply an explanation for it. Surah Al Imran, verse 190 says, Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of the day and night, there are signs for people of reason. God is said to be the explanation for such precise operation of this universe, a harmony not achievable without purposeful creation. You might have noticed, these arguments are the very same arguments and debates being discussed today. Scientific theories on the origin of the universe, philosophical theories on the purposeful creation of this universe, logical questions on a necessary existence. In fact, I have a video about this exact topic. The fact that a 1400-year-old book addresses these exact questions and doubts that are still being asked centuries later is something to reflect on, especially since Muhammad ﷺ was known to be illiterate. Now that we have discussed the Islamic perspective on atheism, there is one last discussion to be made. What causes the fitrah to be corrupted, and can people be held accountable for its natural corruption? There are things we can directly observe through natural means. These can be divided into three separate categories. Firstly, there are intellectual reasons for not believing in God, especially with the advancement of science. Secondly, emotions also play a big role, with trauma and suffering causing people to question the existence of God. Lastly, and the biggest category, is social reasons. People's upbringing and exposure to society massively shapes their beliefs and mindsets. All of these reasons mentioned are all very logical reasons to not believe in God. Can we really fault people for not believing? Asking this question leads to an even bigger question. What will happen to atheists in the afterlife? There is an important note to keep in mind. Ultimately, God's judgment is entirely up to God's discretion. We can only attempt to understand it from what we have been told in the Quran. Accountability is a big part of the religion. We will be held accountable by God for the deeds we have done in this life. Yet the question is it fair for God to hold accountability for natural deviation from the fitrah? The underlying principle is this: God is the most just. God's judgment is not unfair or unreasonable. God judges based on knowledge and sincerity. Surah Isra verse 15 mentions that no one will be punished unless a messenger is sent to them, and this is a natural alignment with our expectations. How can someone who does not know the way of Islam be held accountable for not following it? This is a clear principle told to us by God. Accountability requires access to the message. Further, the Quran repeatedly mentions punishment for people who reject intentionally. Surah Naml, verse 14, mentions the story of the people of Fir'aun. When Musa brought to them miracles from God, they could see that the signs were authentic and true. Yet, they denied them in arrogance. Such type of denial is the one worthy of punishment, knowing the truth, yet denying it. This is a specific type of disbelief. To conclude the discussion on accountability, we cannot question God's judgment. Yet, God has told to us some underlying principles through the Quran which we can further expand on. Accountability requires sincere knowledge. Putting all this together, the Islamic perspective on atheism is as follows. All humans are born upon the fitrah, the natural disposition which inclines a person towards believing in one God. Due to external influences, this fitrah is corrupted. There is a need for reconciliation of this fitrah, which is what the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah attempt to do. To finish, I would like to say this. Islam does not claim belief in God is taught. Rather, it claims belief in God is remembered. That's it for today's video. I hope you got to learn something new. Feel free to let me know in the comments if there are any topics you would like to see discussed. Inshallah, see you all soon.